Let's get right into it. Number 4, the mighty gorilla was just a fairy tale. This one's going to blow your mind completely. Picture a world where gorillas were as mythical as dragons breathing fire. For literally thousands of years, that was our reality. African communities had been sharing stories with European visitors about these massive, hairy creatures lurking deep in the jungle. Europeans did what they always did back then. They rolled their eyes and dismissed it as silly folklore from people who clearly didn't know better. Way back in ancient times, a Greek explorer named Hanno wrote about encountering fierce beasts that local guides called gorillae. Everyone back home just assumed he'd spotted some cranky chimpanzees after enjoying too much wine during his travels. The idea of giant ape-like creatures seemed absolutely ridiculous to civilized society. Then 1847 arrives and changes everything. A physician named Thomas Savage gets his hands on some skulls that make him question reality itself. These specimens were enormous, with teeth powerful enough to crush nuts and bone structures that looked almost human, but definitely weren't. When Paul du Chaillu actually ventured into the jungle and witnessed these legendary beasts with his own eyes, the local people were probably thinking to themselves, "We've been explaining this to you forever, but sure, act shocked now." Even after proving that lowland gorillas were real, the scientific community still refused to believe mountain gorillas existed. Those remained in the realm of fantasy until 1902, when a German captain finally provided undeniable proof they were roaming around up there too. If you're enjoying these mind-bending revelations about history's biggest misconceptions, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we've got plenty more coming your way. Number 3, those glowing mystery orbs were mass hallucinations. Imagine medieval times in England. You're sitting peacefully in church when suddenly a luminous sphere floats right through the stone wall. You tell everyone what happened. They immediately start planning your exorcism ceremony. For centuries, people reported these bizarre glowing balls during thunderstorms, shimmering spheres that could hover in midair, change direction at will, and pass through solid walls like supernatural disco balls. Scientists filed these accounts under the category of maybe stop drinking so much ale. Back in the 1600s, a church in Devon received an uninvited visit from one of these glowing party crashers. It left behind real physical damage and a smell that witnesses described as absolutely demonic. Everyone probably thought the apocalypse was having a trial run, but modern scientists have finally captured these sneaky light shows on camera. Turns out all those supposedly crazy people throughout history were actually telling the truth. These orbs are extremely rare plasma formations that behave nothing like regular lightning. Normal lightning strikes fast and disappears instantly. Ball lightning decides to stick around and terrify everyone for several minutes. And yes, they really can pass through walls, not because they're ghostly apparitions, but because plasma follows its own mysterious rules. Number 2, the biblical Hittite Empire was ancient fiction. For generations, the Hittites were basically the Sasquatch of ancient civilizations. The Bible referenced them constantly, describing this enormous empire that could go toe-to-toe with mighty Egypt. Historians essentially laughed it off as religious storytelling. To them, it sounded about as credible as flying carpets or magic lamps. Then 1906 rolls around and everything changes. German archaeologist Hugo Winkler is excavating in Turkey when he discovers the archaeological jackpot of the century. Not gold or precious gems, but something far more valuable. 10,000 clay tablets containing the complete digital archives of the Hittite Empire carved in stone. These weren't ancient shopping lists or recipe collections. This was the empire's entire governmental database preserved in clay. Royal scandals, financial records, diplomatic correspondence, it was all documented there. These tablets prove the Hittites weren't just real, they were actually one of the ancient world's 3 major superpowers. One tablet even recorded a peace treaty with Egypt's Pharaoh Ramesses II. It was basically the ancient equivalent of ending a Cold War, except with more sandals and fewer nuclear weapons involved. So the Hittites went from being dismissed as biblical mythology to earning their own dedicated chapters in serious history textbooks. Human beings have this fascinating tendency to reject things that challenge what we think we know about the world. Throughout history, countless discoveries that seemed impossible turned out to be absolutely true. Let's get right into it. Number 1, massive ocean waves were sailor fantasies. Picture this scenario. You're a sailor back in the 1800s who just survived getting hit by a wave taller than a cathedral. Now you're trying to convince people back home about what happened, and they're staring at you like you've been guzzling seawater for breakfast. For hundreds of years, sailors returned from voyages with incredible stories about liquid mountains that appeared from nowhere. Waves so enormous they could swallow entire ships faster than you could blink. Scientists, with their fancy mathematical formulas, declared this was completely impossible. Waves followed specific laws. Waves had absolute limits. These maritime tall tales were filed away with stories about sea monsters and mermaids. Then January 1st, 1995 happened, and science got absolutely demolished by reality. At an oil drilling platform off the coast of Norway, laser measurement equipment recorded something that theoretically couldn't exist. An 84-foot monster wave just materialized out of nowhere on a day when surrounding waves were casually rolling at 20 feet high. This measurement came from equipment that couldn't lie, couldn't exaggerate, and definitely couldn't get drunk like those old sailors. If that wave had struck literally anywhere else without scientific instruments watching, it would have been just another unbelievable story that nobody took seriously. Now, scientists believe these ship-eating giants are lurking everywhere in our oceans. They're just incredibly skilled at not leaving any witnesses behind to tell their tales. These rogue waves can appear without warning, crush anything in their path, then disappear back into the sea like they were never there. The mathematical models that claimed such waves were impossible had to be completely rewritten. Suddenly, centuries of dismissed sailor stories started looking a lot more credible. Those weathered old sea dogs weren't spinning yarns after too much rum. They were accidentally documenting one of the ocean's most dangerous and mysterious phenomena. What makes this discovery even more unsettling is realizing how many ships throughout history might have encountered these liquid behemoths. Vessels that simply vanished without a trace, their crews never able to report what destroyed them. The ocean had been keeping this deadly secret for millennia, occasionally revealing itself to sailors who lived to tell about it, only to have their accounts dismissed as drunken fantasies. Modern satellite technology and advanced wave monitoring systems have now confirmed that these maritime monsters are far more common than anyone imagined. They can form through various mechanisms, sometimes when smaller waves combine and amplify each other, creating temporary giants that tower above the surrounding sea. The implications are staggering for shipping, offshore drilling, and naval operations. What was once considered impossible folklore is now recognized as a legitimate threat that maritime engineers must account for when designing vessels and offshore structures. Those old sailors deserved way more credit than they ever received. They were witnessing genuine natural phenomena that science simply wasn't ready to accept. Their so-called tall tales were actually first-hand observations of one of nature's most spectacular and terrifying displays of raw power. The next time someone tells you an unbelievable story, maybe think twice before dismissing it entirely. History has this funny way of proving that the impossible sometimes turns out to be absolutely real. The world is full of mysteries we haven't figured out yet, and yesterday's superstition might just be tomorrow's scientific breakthrough. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.